Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel Vigil, presented by Superbook Sports. Taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel Vigil.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on Coffee Break. Richie Carney, Rachel Vigil talking about preseason game number 2, and we're also going to get into a little Jared Bednar talk towards the end of the show. But Richie, first of all, how was your weekend? You had a fun weekend.
I did have a fun weekend. I got out the pool a little bit, and then I went to
working on the tan.
Yeah, you got to, right? Because once those summer days, once that sun runs out,
I know
it is dark.
It is.
So, but yeah, I did that, and then I went to Ed Sheeran on Saturday night. I braved the rain delay like the other 85,000
How long
people.
was it?
It was like two and a half, almost 3 hours.
What did you do?
Well,
I saw some people were playing cards. Like,
yeah, no, we were in our seats, and then we got there. The opener's opener, I don't remember her name. They didn't even let her come out because of the weather or whatever. And then, so we were just like, oh, like, because everyone was really excited to see Khalid too, who was like the main opener.
Mm-hmm.
And then Khalid came out for like 3 songs, didn't sing any of the songs. I feel like people were like he was just getting like warmed up, and they kicked him off the stage. Like he was like, I apologize, I'm so sorry.
They're making me leave.
Right. So we're like, okay, like, you know, it's usually like 30 minutes per lightning strike. So we're like, 30 minutes an hour, like we'll be fine. It's not that bad. And then it was, and then it started raining, and the clouds came through, and so we ended up making our way down to the floor. But that also kind of locked us in place.
Okay.
So there was nothing we could do. Like there was no playing cards when you're all just standing in a group of people. So like we stood there for like 2.5 hours in the rain, in all of that. But then we actually thought there was a point where we were like, if it gets past 10 o'clock, which is when the show was scheduled to end, he may not come out. And then he did. He came out just after 10 o'clock, played the full 2 hours, which honestly, good for him.
Yeah.
And it probably helped that he set the attendance record for Empower Field.
I saw that.
85,000 people. Now, to be fair, Taylor Swift would have easily done that, except she had a bigger stage and you couldn't use part of the stands because of obstructed views or whatever. So like there were people that were trying to, and I was like, well, hold on.
Wait a second.
Right. Not to take away from the accomplishment.
There's like a little asterisk there, but
I'll say this, because we were talking about it after Coffee Break last week, that I was sharing some concerns about, is like Ed Sheeran past his prime? Is he because the tickets were really cheap, and I was like stunned because I considered him this global superstar. Rachel, what was the Mark Twain quote? The rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated. The rumors of Ed Sheeran being past his prime are greatly exaggerated.
Okay. Well,
I almost felt like I had to apologize for even thinking those thoughts after the show.
Now I feel like I need to go to an Ed Sheeran concert. So at some point in my life, I will get, and luckily, I mean, it's like you said, cheap tickets. So luckily, I'll try and do that at some point. Maybe he'll come back in a year or two. I don't know. When was the last time he was here?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Well, we're Ed Sheeran fans now. Broncos, obviously, preseason game number 2 against the 49ers. Went different than what I was expecting. Again, I think, well, let's actually just start with the positive. Jaleel McLaughlin is a lock for this team. He is a lock for the 53. If you don't sign him, somebody's going to pick him up. He looks fantastic. He's been like that for the entire training camp. But just all these things of so much depth at the running back position that it's like, well, is he going to make 53?
Yeah, I mean, they're really deep at that position. They've got Tony Jones. They signed the Saints running back last week. So I agree with you. I don't know. I mean, we've always looked at the preseason as an opportunity to like get your team in order, get it ready. But like people don't really take it that way anymore. What it really is it's for like the bottom 7 spots on the roster to make their name and make their claim. And that's where Jaleel McLaughlin is in. And I don't know what more you could do. Like he has scored on, I believe, like 75% of the Broncos touchdowns in the preseason have come from him. And it's through the air. It's on the ground. I understand that he's got a little bit of that Philip Lindsay stigmatism to him, to him, where he's like 175, 185 pounds. He's 5'7", which I'm not very big, but I'm bigger than that. And so the thought of me lining up out in the backfield is scary, let alone someone smaller than me.
But
so
speed.
Yes. So he has that going for him, that he has clearly carved out a playmaking ability as a change of pace back, and he's got a head coach who loves that specific role on a team. You're talking about a head coach that made a career for Darren Sproles. I know he did some stuff with the Chargers too, but I remember him really prominently with the Saints, and Alvin Kamara, who's a little bit of a smaller back, not as small as Jaleel, but making moves out of the backfield. So he's got a head coach that loves it, and he's got the track record thus far in the preseason to prove it. I think he's got to be on the team.
Yep, I'm reading all the comments too, and a lot of people talking about the secondary or the second team defense, the third unit defense need to play with that physical play. Secondary need to coverage.
I think I understand what they're trying to say.
But the physicality it struggled, and we can get into the fact that they obviously lost the game again by 1 point, and everyone's like, oh, well, that's not a big deal. We can get into that in a second, but I just feel like if you're gonna go with the running back room, like go with the guy that has shined. Like I know Sean Payton obviously likes Washington, and there's other names, but like go with the guy that has shined. I'm sorry, I don't want it to be one of those things where it's like, oh, it could have been, but like he wasn't part of the Saints or any of that kind of stuff.
I agree. I think in those situations, upside and flash of playmaking ability is a tiebreaker.
For sure.
Like, does Jaleel have a size disadvantage, and maybe you think that hurts you a little bit in pass protection to like a Tony Jones Jr. or Washington and things like that? Sure, but again, you're an offensive-minded head coach.
Yep.
You're commanding an offense that was one of the worst in the NFL last year and has been for a pretty significant length of time. I think that serves as a significant tiebreaker because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, running backs fall off the apple cart, right? That's the euphemism that you use. So if it doesn't work and you get rid of Tony Jones Jr. or you get rid of Washington or whatever, there's a chance they may just be there later in the season. Or if not, there's somebody very similar like them.
Javonte Williams looked good. I loved that they were just like constantly like, we're going to give you the ball right off the bat. Like there is and I feel like there were nerves for that first play.
You know what I mean? Like 4 straight times.
Yeah. And, you're like, yes, that's what I want to see. I want to see him get back in his rhythm, yada, yada, yada. But I think it was just nerves on the first play, everybody.
Yes,
everyone was
of course.
like, oh my gosh.
I won't lie. When that happened, I was just like,
I know,
man.
You're like, oh no. Okay. But I think it was all nerves.
Just like Judy had that awful wide open drop against the Cardinals for a first down in the red zone, and Russ went right back to him the next play for a touchdown. I like the faith and the confidence that this team has to like, hey, Javonte dropped a cherry right in his hands on the first play of the game, went right back to him the next play for a first down on a much more difficult catch and route coming back there along the sideline.
For sure. Lots of people in the comments wanting to know if we are live. We are live with you this morning. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. A few days this week, we will have pre-recorded just because we'll both be out with the Rams when they come into town and obviously down there at Dove Valley. But yes, we are live with you guys this morning. Good morning. Thanks for hanging out with us. Failed finish. Let's talk about it. I saw the Twitter sphere. Are we still calling it Twitter? It's forever Twitter.
I am. I'm sticking my foot in the ground.
I'm with you. Forever Twitter. They freaked out. And I won't lie. I was like, oh my gosh, again. But these weren't the starters. Everybody take a breath.
Yeah.
But when you don't see the same, I don't know, you don't see improvement from week to week, you're like, well, what are we missing here? And I think that's where a lot of people are coming in and they're like, come on, Broncos, what are we doing here?
I don't disagree with you, but I'll say this, like you acknowledged, you are talking about third and sometimes deeper string guys when you get there late in the fourth quarter and all of that. And so it is a little bit of like a skewed sample size. Now they're playing against other third and deeper string players at that time. So it's not like the competition level is unequal, but I don't think it's like necessarily a fair representation of the game, considering the starters who will be playing the whole game played the smallest portion of it. And I'll say this, I think that we talked after the Arizona game, we heard from both Vance Joseph and Sean Payton in the week that followed about the biggest thing that they saw that they needed to ramp up. It wasn't necessarily the intensity, but it was the tackling. And I felt like there was some of that. I mean, there was plenty of wrap ups, even, from first string on down, where it was like, oh, that was a broken play. That could have been a 2-yard loss. And now it's a 4-yard gain kind of thing. So I was frustrated with that. But in terms of like the lack of intensity, I don't know. I mean, I saw guys making turnover plays. I saw Elijah Garcia flying around, and things like that. That's another guy that's having a great preseason in camp that kind of is surging like that.
It's a name you're starting to hear.
Yeah.
More and
So
more.
I get it. And I think we've just become so accustomed to the sky is falling in Broncos country. and I'm a part of that. And
we all are, to be honest.
And I'll say this too, because I think I actually get annoyed when you hear the people that are like, come on, guys, it's just the preseason. It's like, no, like I reserve the right to be like unnecessarily irrationally upset about something that maybe doesn't even matter in the long run. So I'm with him.
I was always the person that was like, it's just a preseason game. It doesn't matter. When Sean Payton said it matters, I'm like, damn right it does, Sean Payton. It matters.
I want it to matter.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too, is that I do feel overall when you look at the game, yeah, there are things you'd like to take back. Yeah, they've lost by 1 point 2 weeks in a row now. And that stings. But I think overall, I do just sense a more collective kind of organizational aspect, togetherness, like locked in kind of focus.
Yeah.
So I think the intensity will ramp up in the regular season because that's when the players know things go live. I do think by and large, a lot of players look at the preseason as Gilligan hats and sideline interviews and all that. And like, I mean, don't get me wrong, or don't forget, the players were trying to like abolish the preseason in previous CBA negotiations.
Yeah, true.
You know, and it's gotten smaller every year. It went from like 6 games to 4, now to 3.
I could see in the next 10 years, there's like maybe 1 or 0.
Maybe it'll just depend on the revenue. The league's got to make that money somehow.
Yeah, true.
So,
you have to add in games someplace. So it was interesting. I also saw a lot of people were talking about like, it doesn't matter to win the preseason, but it does when you're trying to change the mentality of a bad team for so long. And I agree with that statement. And I think Broncos country is spot on when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the tied for worst team in NFL history, the 0-16 Detroit Lions went 4-0 in the preseason.
Yep.
Right? So that should just tell you that there's definitely a grain of salt element to this.
Yep.
But when last year in the preseason, when the Broncos in their second week of the preseason, exactly almost this time last year, were getting slaughtered by the Buffalo Bills, who scored on like every possession in some fashion. And it was just like, there's a difference between losing like they have the last 2 weeks. And yeah, you can argue that it was like they bent and bent and bent, and all they had to do was not break. And then it kind of broke right there at the end with the field goal or the 2-point conversion. And, that's great. But at the same time, they're not getting slaughtered. Like, it's not like such an ugly product that you want to turn away. And that in itself is already an improvement.
Isn't that sad, though, that we're like, oh, yeah, they're not getting absolutely destroyed in a preseason game. So that can be a level of improvement.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, when you break a bone, when you blow your knee out, whatever it is, there's a rehabilitation process. You don't go from getting your cast off to, spiking a volleyball or to, you don't take your brace off to running marathons again. You got to work up to it. So as long as I think you're seeing steps and signs in the positive direction, however big or small they may be, I think you have to just kind of like temper it a little bit. Just wait.
I like how you describe it and, compare it to getting a cast off. Like, that's how bad it was.
Oh,
last season?
We were
a broken bone.
We were breaking out the crash cart at points last season. Like, Broncos country needed resuscitation from a fandom standpoint.
Also, Jalen Virgil tearing his meniscus. That was obviously a really unfortunate thing, as we all kind of watched, because they had the ISO camera just on him, and you can tell he's just like, oh no, like all of a sudden something happened right there.
Can we just for a second talk about, like, I understand and it took me, I didn't even register it in real time. Like like, why aren't they calling an injury timeout? And it's like, well, at that point in the game, like, they don't call injury timeouts because they don't want players faking injuries. And I actually get that. I think that's a good rule in place. But under 2 minutes, there's the automatic review. The fact that wasn't automatically reviewed because there was 1 second left it was clear. It was super clear. I rewound it like 4 times and paused it, and it's very obvious that the ball hits the ground with 1 second left.
I'm with you.
But the fact that they don't review it because there's 1 second left on the clock and not 2 seconds, give me a break.
I'm with you. And I love that Sean Payton was pissed off about it. I'm like, good, you should be. I was pissed off about it.
That was another moment that he was standing out there on the field looking at the saying, that's BS and you know it. And he just kept going over and over and over again. And I was like, this guy's not going to let things slide. Now, he acknowledged like, you need to be friends with the refs. You can't just go scorched earth all the time. But like, that's just another testament to Peyton's savviness of like, I know when I'm going to blow up. We see Michael Malone with the Nuggets. Like, he knows when to go off on the refs and get ejected and to spark those moments. If I'm a player in that moment, if I'm Jalen Virgil or if I'm whoever, was out there, I'm like, that guy's got our back.
Lots of people saying, can we make it through a game without an injury, or starting to get worried about all the wide receiver injuries? Coming in, we were all like, they have really good depth at wide receiver. And now, of course, we're back here and we're like, well, so should the Broncos make a move for a bigger name wide receiver to add somebody in?
I mean, gosh, it depends on who's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, we did this when Tim Patrick went down. I mean, like we were going to call Julio Jones.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Odell,
Hollywood
I think, was
Higgins.
there.
You know, it's like, come on now. Like I think that they probably will bring in some depth. I don't think they're going to go sign like a big name guy, but I'm sure at some point they will consider bringing in some depth. But I think if you've got Judy, you've got what looks to be a rejuvenated Sutton.
Yep.
You know, Marvin Mims we finally got a little bit of Marvin Mims, you know, in the beginning of this game. And then you've got the little Jordan Humphreys, the Marquez Callaways, the guys, the Brandon Johnsons, and guys that are comfortable with Sean Payton.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably going to be looking at carrying and maybe an extra tight end.
Yeah.
So I would probably not hit the panic button yet, but it's, you know, it's creeping in the back of my mind.
For sure. No, keep it in the back of your mind. See what can happen. Next week, I guess it's this weekend now.
Yes, it is this weekend.
This weekend for game 3, I'm like, well, we're not really going to see anybody. And then we go into the Russ performance, and everybody was expecting that 21 to 24 or 21 to 23 snaps.
Yeah, that's what he said.
That's what Sean Payton said. He gets 13. Russ is running around all over the place because his offensive line isn't helping him at all. And you're kind of like, well, don't play anybody week 3 because you don't want to see anybody get hurt.
Yes.
It's too close now.
You have to weigh what's the best we could get out of it. What's the best we could see from him against what's the worst that could happen.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest with you. And I know that, you know, Will Peterson wrote an article at denversports.com about it. It was a clear shift in philosophy. Now, Sean Payton could have just been talking in generalities when he said 20 to 25 players or whatever it is. And it really was just like, hey, we're going to go a couple of series.
Yeah.
But what else did we need to see? He looked good. He was running around to the degree where I was like, is he running too much?
That's what I was thinking. So I'm like,
is there a point?
Wait a second.
Okay. What I was going to ask you this question. Is there a point where we would be like, hey, if it looks like that, if it looks clean and he had a big run call back for holding on Cortland Sutton. He looked like Seattle Russ in that. And what I remember of Seattle Russ and what made him so savvy, in my opinion, was that he could use his legs and could use them well, but it was when he knew exactly when to use them. It was, you know, he had the defense in the right position and he turned a drop back pass into an impromptu quarterback draw, or he would curl out to the sideline and just kind of get across for a first down. That's what he did. Yeah. And it looked really good. It wasn't like, and he knew how to manipulate his body so he didn't take big hits, which last year he was torpedoing head first and getting concussed, which shows effort and you respect that. But it wasn't like RG3 and Lamar Jackson and some Cam Newton who just like rocket themselves in.
Agreed.
So, but is there going to be a point where you might think this season, like, hey, Russ is running too much?
I thought that on Saturday. I was like,
really?
When it was like the 3rd run in a row or something like that. And I was like, oh my gosh. But then you also watched the offensive line just like the pocket just disappeared on him. Yeah. So you're like, all right, well, you got to run. You got to move. That's
context, right?
But that makes me nervous that, I mean, the 49ers are a good team, so I don't want to take anything away from them there. But Russ can't run like that all season. He's going to, 1, get hurt, and 2, he still is an older quarterback in the NFL. Once you start getting beat up and you're going through the physicality of every single week going through that, that's not good for your starting quarterback. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Brock Purdy. He's not.
I'm just going to say
it. Doesn't make you nervous?
I'm going to say it. And I'm going to tell you exactly how this is going to play out from my perspective.
Oh,
right now, I'm going to tell you, I don't think there's too much. I don't.
Oh, my gosh.
If he runs like that, and it's smart, and it's well-timed, and it's moving the chains. This Broncos offense doesn't move the sticks in the last 7 years. They're bad. So if he's got that in his skill set, and it's the 15 pounds that he lost, and he's rejuvenated, and he's motivated, and he's physically in a better position to do it, like last year he wasn't. He was thick waddling around out there. Okay.
His post-game press conference, we've obviously seen Russ multiple times already this season, but I'm looking and I was like, he looks so much slimmer.
He's got the pipes.
Yeah.
He's got the,
I know.
My God.
But even just his face, and it's so I do feel bad for Russell Wilson in the extent that everything he does gets talked about. Like the fact
he's
that we're
a
talking,
megastar.
he is. And I do feel bad for him because, again, every little thing is like, oh,
Right. It's like,
Russell
hey, can I
Wilson
have a
did
zit
this.
on my forehead without reading about it in People magazine?
Seriously.
Like-
Oh, Russell Wilson stressed out. Better call your facialist. You know what I mean? I feel for him. But his post-game press conference really was just like a normal guy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. For so many times where we've given Russ a lot of crap for it being super scripted, like, I don't know, he just felt very normal and at peace. And I think that's because he has a lot of confidence in his head coach and like the plan that's going forward.
Yes. He has, I'm sure he had a lot of confidence in Pete Carroll when he was younger. And then obviously their relationship splintered and all of that. But I just think it was a really bad position for him to be in.
Agreed.
With Nathaniel Hackett last year, because he had so much on the line and so much to prove, and he bet it all on himself by forcing his way essentially out of the team that he won a Super Bowl with and went to 2 and all that. And then to have your like future tied to someone like Nathaniel Hackett, who just is a good guy and all that, but just like wasn't ready for that moment. That's tough. And so I do feel like he's got a little bit of a burden off of his shoulders. So yes, I don't think if that's what needs to be done, I trust Russell because of what I've seen from him in the last few years to do it the right way. But I will say this, because I told you I was going to know how this will play out. The second he rolls out and gets blasted by a middle linebacker and is out for like 3 weeks, I'm going to take back everything I said. And I'm not even going to apologize for it.
Richie's like, I'm jumping ship right there.
Yes. Flip flop.
This is something I actually didn't really like pay attention to. And this is why we love reading your guys' comments. But I think you're right. I like how Russ looks for the sideline when he's running. It's something I hadn't actually paid attention to, but you're right. He did.
He's
just so smart.
He has an incredible awareness of where he's at in the field, where the sticks are, who's in the pursuit angles and all that. I'm telling you, it was one of the things that I noticed about him so early on in his career, because it was such a juxtaposition from the Cam Newtons, the RG3s, who were just using their physicality. And it doesn't matter. Josh Allen's the same way. Josh Allen runs like a runaway train. It doesn't matter. Now he's big enough to do it, and I certainly wouldn't want to be in his way. Lamar Jackson's kind of similar, but Russ isn't he's not built like that, and he knows it. And that's it. Patrick Mahomes does the same thing. He doesn't run a lot, but he knows when to run, where to run, and he's savvy enough to know not to take the big hit and to position himself and kind of give it up.
Have you seen enough out of Russell Wilson to say, I feel comfortable week 1 against the Raiders? With how he struggled early in training camp, with how we haven't seen really too much. Like, let's go back to preseason game number 1. They obviously went back out there to score a touchdown. Like, that was the goal. Do you feel comfortable enough in Russell Wilson, just Russ, we're going to get to another part, to say, all right, week 1 against the Raiders, I feel good?
Not yet, but I'm close.
Ooh,
I'm close.
What's close?
I think
out of 100%.
I would say I'm 70.
Oh, that was 70. Not as close as I thought you were.
Yeah, okay. Well, I feel like I'm like coming back in the shell a little bit. I feel like I was confident. No. I would say, yeah, 75, 80%. I'm like, I'm almost there. And I think I will know that number will be, 10 or 15% higher or lower after the first quarter of the Raiders game. Like, not the first drive, because that's like, they go 3 and out, and it's like, well, there we go. I was right. But after the first quarter, when they've mixed it up a little bit, I think I'll know.
My fiance is so funny. He's like, do you think that there's a bet in Vegas of if the Broncos go 3 and out? And I literally was like 100%. And somebody is going to win a lot of money.
Absolutely. There are, you can bet on the result of the first drive, no matter whether it's punt, touchdown, field goal, turnover. You can, there's nothing that you can't waste your money on in that city. There's nothing.
Waste your money on, huh?
There's nothing.
All right, let's read some more of the comments. Stidham is a snooze. Well, yes, he is.
Agree.
He's overpaid, man.
Listen, and listen, I'm not going to pretend like this is in years past, the backup quarterback discussion, which a lot of people have found nauseating to the degree that it's been discussed.
Yeah.
But it was a real discussion. I mean, when your quarterback is, mid-30s Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
Or Case Keenum coming off the miracle season that saved his whole career.
Yep.
Or rookie Drew Lock, free agent. older free agent Teddy Bridgewater. The backup quarterback matters in those situations because your confidence in your starting quarterback is kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
You gave up all the family jewels to get Russell Wilson, and then you gave up whatever was left to get Sean Payton.
Yep.
So the backup quarterback matters, but not really as much in this situation. If Russ goes down, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. That's just what it is. So I'm not going to sit here and split hairs like, oh my God,
why'd they
Ben
pay him?
DiNucci. Well, Sean Payton likes him. I'm curious why. The defenders will point to the defenders of Stidham will point to the game he had, that 49ers Raiders game, where he really did play really well. Like it was, but then like what happened the previous 15 weeks? We have to look at the average here, or everybody. Like, you know, it's like the Disney movie that focuses on like this one moment, but you don't see anything before or anything after. So I think Ben DiNucci might be just as good, if not better. He's not as experienced. You know, I think Stidham's got him in that regard, and Stidham has had the opportunity to sit behind some impressive quarterbacks
for sure
in his career. But yeah, like there's nothing that Jarrett Stidham does that I'm like, ooh, like if Russ tweaks a hammy and he's out for a couple of weeks, Stidham can keep us afloat. He's not Brock Purdy. He's not Brock Osweiler. You know what I mean?
I just saw a meme the other day about Brock Osweiler and like what he's doing. I wish I could remember the exact saying, but I'm like, oh, Brock, you got away with so much.
I remember Brock most fondly for being a very unheralded part of the reason why the Broncos won Super Bowl 50. I don't think they win it without him.
Really?
Oh, he held it down in that stretch where Peyton was benched. And he was hurt, but so he held it down. He really did. And they don't win it without him. And the former players will say that. But
you're an Osweiler fan.
The thing I remember, Brock, I hate the second thing that I remember Brock Osweiler the most for was him on camera throwing a pizza at some guy's face in Arizona. I don't know why to this day that sticks in my memory. Is like, that's what I remember. When you say Brock Osweiler, it's Super Bowl 50 pizza toss.
Yep. All right. Last comment we'll get to before we get to some Jared Bednar talk. With this O-line, no way I'm comfortable with Russ. Not comfortable with any QB.
Well, I'm not comfortable with any. You wouldn't be comfortable with Patrick Mahomes?
Well, this offensive line. Let's be honest. No quarterback can do well without an offensive
line. In principle, I agree. But it wasn't but a couple of years ago, Rachel, we watched Joe Burrow play in a Super Bowl behind the offensive line that got him hit the most and sacked the most in the NFL. Now, Joe Burrow's better than Russell Wilson. So I think I guess I'm going to assume what he's meaning is I don't feel comfortable with any quarterback that the Broncos have behind that offensive line. And I agree with that. We're not going to be comfortable. We're not. I think
it's a bad offensive line.
I think the bookends there in Bowles and McGlinchey are going to give us fits. There's going to be holdings. There's going to be false starts that are probably above the league average from both of those. Interior wise, I think we kind of looked at Ben Powers as like, oh, he is going to be this.
Is permanent.
Yeah. And you know what? We're probably going to be underwhelmed by it. That's the reality of free agency. You pay all this money for these commodities that are overpriced, but that's because the market dictates it.
Yep.
So I think we need to plan for that. That's why I loved what I saw from Russell Wilson running. And that's why I don't necessarily know if there's a too much, because a lot of it's going to be forced. Yeah. So it's one thing if he's got a clean pocket and he's wide open and he just tries to scramble and run, which we saw that last year.
True.
We saw him because he was having a hard time. It felt like reading the middle of the field, or things weren't connecting right chemistry-wise with the receiver. And he would turn a decent pocket into a scramble drill, and then he would get taken down. This doesn't feel like that.
A Brock update, actually. Brock was in the booth for the Appalachian State Texas A&M game on Saturday.
You know what? I did read that he's been calling games and stuff. So good for Brock, man.
Good for him. And how much money did he rob the Broncos of? What was the final?
Well, he had 2 stints. I don't remember what the finances were, but he didn't rob the Broncos for nearly as much as he robbed the Texans, who traded away from him. And then it was like the Texans and the Browns, and I think the Dolphins were in there at some point. He did the money tour. He got paid.
Good for him. Jared Bednar doing something really cool, you guys. This is a special moment between Jared Bednar and Archer Franklin in Humboldt, Saskatchewan. Archer is a member of the U18 AA Humboldt Broncos, which we all obviously remember the terrible accident, and is currently battling a bone marrow failure. I won't even try to pronounce that. Well, I guess it's just aplastic anemia.
Anemia?
Thank you.
Yeah.
See, sometimes I fail. And it needed a stem cell transplant, his odds of finding a match is 1 in 900. So really, really cool to see that moment. Obviously, your heart breaks for Archer and you hope that he's able to find, that 1 in 900 essentially. But it is cool to see Jared Bednar just out there sitting, having a normal conversation with him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that with what that community and that team went through, that was gut wrenching, and the way that those people's lives are now changed forever, and what we're seeing here.
Yep.
And that's got to be a scary feeling. Like, hey, my life and my health is in the hands of the world at large, and there's like a 1 in 900 chance.
So often I feel like we all take our health for granted, and we should never. No. None of us at all, because it can be taken from you so fast.
Yeah, and I'll raise my hand. I definitely do that.
Yeah.
I feel like there are moments where I'm like, I'm young, I'm healthy, or like, what's the worst that could happen? It's like, well, that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so super cool. I just think there's not enough nice things that I could say about Jared Bednar. He in the limited conversations I've been able to have with him, the press conferences I've been able to interact with him, just such a humble guy, such a nice guy,
respectful,
down to earth, respectful, and just like a genuine person. And it's nice to know that, we're fortunate enough in our community to have somebody who is all of those things, while also secondarily just being great at what he does.
Yep. No, I'm 100% with you. Jared Bednar is one of the best coaches I've ever met. He is so respectful to every single person, and I feel like that shows throughout his team too, because the Avalanche players, they're super tight. Like, it is a tight-knit community in that locker room, and they're also all very, very respectful. I can tell you, in different locker rooms, you probably agree that's not always the case, but Jared Bednar has put together a very well-rounded squad for sure. And then, of course, we obviously send our love to Archer too. And we hope you're able to find that 1 in 900.
Yeah. No, that's tough. I'll definitely be keeping tabs on that to see how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. All right, everyone. That is going to do it for Coffee Break today. Thank you guys all for the comments and hanging out with us. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. As Cecil Lammey would say, get back to work, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.